Billionaire'S abductors never knew the true identity of the Black Maid. Jasmine Alexander was only 7 when her world fractured in a way no child should ever experience. Her parents' divorce was not a quiet separation. It was loud, messy, and filled with venom that spilled into her young life. She remembered sitting at the corner of the living room, hugging her worn-out teddy bear while her father shouted about finances and her mother screamed about betrayal. Neither of them looked at Jasmine as if she were part of the equation. She was a responsibility, not a daughter. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another story just as powerful and emotional as this one. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. When the final papers were signed, both parents fought over who shouldn't take her rather than who would. Her father had already remarried, starting a new family, and her mother claimed she was too financially unstable to care for a child. The solution, after bitter arguments, was her grandfather, a quiet man who lived far away, almost like a ghost from a distant world. His name was Chen Li, a man with a sharp gaze, weathered hands, and a calm that made Jasmine feel both safe and uncertain. "Pack her things," he said in a voice deep and firm, though not unkind. "She will live with me." And just like that, Jasmine's life was uprooted. No more noisy city streets, no more pretending her parents loved her, no more familiar toys scattered across the living room. Instead, she was whisked away to Hengxian, Guangxi, a rural county in southern China where her grandfather had made his home. Life in Hengxian was a shock. Jasmine had grown used to fast food restaurants, flashing streetlights, and school buses filled with chatter. Here, the houses were old but sturdy, the roads narrow and lined with bamboo groves, and the air carried the scent of earth and fresh rain. The people spoke Mandarin with an accent she struggled to understand. She felt like an alien in her new world. At first, she resented it. She missed her parents, even though they hadn't wanted her. She cried at night, hiding her face in her pillow so her grandfather wouldn't hear. But Chen Li was observant. One evening, as she sniffled quietly in her bed, he slid the door open and sat beside her. "You are stronger than you think, Jasmine," he told her, his Chinese accent wrapping around her English name in a way that made it sound almost poetic. But strength does not come from tears. It comes from learning. At that moment, Jasmine didn't understand. She only knew that her grandfather wasn't the type to hug or soothe her with lullabies. Instead, he spoke of strength, as though that was what she needed to survive. The revelation came slowly. One day, Jasmine followed him into the town square and noticed how people bowed slightly when he passed. Whispers followed him, respectful whispers. Children pointed, and men nodded in acknowledgement. "Who is he?" she asked a girl her age, curious. "You don't know." The girl replied, eyes wide. "That's Chen Li, the Dragon Master." Jasmine blinked. "Dragon Master?" The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "He leads the Black Dragon." That night, she pressed her grandfather for answers. At first, he brushed her off with a stern frown. But Jasmine was persistent, and eventually, Chen Li relented. He sat her down in the wooden dojo behind his house, where candles flickered against scrolls of Chinese calligraphy. "The Black Dragon," he began, "is not just a name. It is a brotherhood. For generations, we have trained to master Taekwondo, not for violence, but for balance. We defend the weak. We protect the innocent. We fight only when there is no other choice." His words resonated in her young heart. She could feel the weight behind them. "Were you the leader?" she asked timidly. Chen Li nodded. "I am their sensei, their guardian, their guide." The very next morning, Jasmine begged him to train her. At first, he refused, saying she was too young, too fragile. But Jasmine had inherited his stubbornness. For weeks she mimicked his students' movements from afar, copying stances, punches, and kicks, even though her small body wobbled and failed more often than not. She practiced until her legs ached and her arms shook. One evening, after watching her persistence, Chen Li finally said, "If you are determined, then you will train. But understand, Jasmine, Taekwondo is not just fighting. It is discipline, respect, and self-control. Once you begin, there is no turning back." Jasmine nodded eagerly. "I want to learn, Grandpa. I want to be strong." Training was grueling. The dojo smelled of sweat and incense, the wooden floor hard beneath her feet. She woke at dawn to run laps around the village, her breath burning in the cool morning air. She repeated stances 100 times until her legs trembled. When she fell, Chen Li did not help her up. He only said, "Again." When she cried from exhaustion, he told her, "Your tears cannot break wood. Your fists can." But through the pain, Jasmine grew. Her movements sharpened, her body strengthened, and her spirit hardened. By the time she was 10, she was no longer the fragile, abandoned girl who had cried in bed. She had become one of Chen Li's most promising students, admired even by older disciples. Among the members of the Black Dragon, there was a mark of loyalty, a tattoo of a coiled black dragon inked onto the side of the neck. Jasmine saw it often, shimmering in sweat as the men trained, and she longed for the day she would earn it. To her, it wasn't just ink. It was proof of belonging, of family. Her grandfather, though strict, was proud. One evening, he stood before her as she practiced her forms and said, "You move like fire, Jasmine. Fierce and unstoppable. One day you may surpass me." But shadows loomed. Among Chen Li's closest allies was a man named Xing. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that gleamed with ambition. Xing was a brilliant fighter, second only to Chen Li himself. The younger disciples idolized him, but Jasmine felt uneasy around him. His smile was too sharp, his words too tempting. One night, Jasmine overheard a heated argument between her grandfather and Xing. "We have power, Sensei," Xing growled. "Why waste it protecting peasants? With our skill, we could rule, we could demand respect, we could have everything." Chen Li's voice thundered back, "The Black Dragon does not fight for greed or power. We fight for love, for family, for the helpless. If you cannot understand that, you do not belong here." The clash shook the very foundation of the brotherhood. Xing's ambition could not be caged, and soon he left, taking a handful of disciples with him. But his departure was not silent. It was the birth of a rival group. They called themselves the Crimson Fangs, and unlike the Black Dragon, they thrived on fear. Jasmine, still young, could only watch as her grandfather's heart ached from betrayal. But deep inside her, a seed of fear grew. She knew this was not the last time Xing would cross their path. Years later, when Jasmine would find herself in Georgia, working as a maid in a billionaire's mansion, she would remember those early days. The tears, the training, the betrayal, all of it shaped her. But for now, as a child standing barefoot on the dojo floor, fists clenched, eyes blazing with determination, she knew only one thing. She would carry the Black Dragon in her blood. And no matter what the future held, she would never forget who she was becoming. How would you respond if you were in Jasmine's position, having to adapt to a completely new life with strict discipline and high expectations? By the time Jasmine Alexander turned 12, life in Hengxian had transformed from a strange, foreign experience into a rigorous routine of discipline and training. The girl who had once wept in her pillow at night had become a determined force, her movements precise, her eyes sharp with focus. Chen Li, her grandfather and sensei, had a quiet pride in her progress, though he rarely expressed it with words. Instead, he tested her relentlessly, pushing her to the edge of exhaustion, insisting that only those who endured hardship could truly master the art of the Black Dragon. Jasmine's days began before dawn. The first light of morning found her running along the narrow village roads, the smell of wet earth filling her lungs as her legs burned with fatigue. She would then practice stances and forms in the dojo for hours, repeating each movement until it was etched into her muscles. Her small frame often trembled under the weight of practice, but she never faltered. Each punch, each kick, each precise movement was a testament to her growing determination. Chen Li often watched silently from the corner, his gaze sharp, his presence commanding yet not overbearing. Occasionally, he would step forward to correct her posture or adjust her stance, but most of the time, Jasmine was left to struggle, to rise, and to learn from her mistakes. It was a harsh method, but it forged resilience, and Jasmine responded with a fire in her chest that matched the black dragon tattoo she had seen on the older disciples, a symbol of loyalty, courage, and mastery. But not all within the Black Dragon shared her dedication for noble purposes. Leaving Hengxian was harder than Jasmine had anticipated. She had spent over a decade training under her grandfather's watchful eyes, mastering the Black Dragon techniques and absorbing the lessons of discipline, patience, and honor. Yet the world beyond her village called, and with it came the promise of independence, education, and opportunities she could never have imagined in rural China. At 18, Jasmine Alexander boarded a plane bound for Georgia, United States. The roar of the engines and the cramped airplane seat could not quell the mixture of excitement and nervousness swirling in her chest. She had saved every bit of money she earned from odd jobs in Hengxian, and her scholarship to a local community college allowed her to pursue her studies while keeping a foot in the real world. She had dreams, simple yet ambitious. She wanted to study business, sharpen her mind, and live a life that was hers alone. But America was not as welcoming as she had hoped. The language barrier, the cultural differences, and the sheer size of the cities made her feel small and lost. Apartments were expensive, jobs were scarce, and every day became a struggle to balance survival with education. One particularly harsh afternoon, Jasmine found herself walking through a wealthy neighborhood after her part-time shift at a cafe. She had been late for class and rushed out without finishing her tips or even having proper lunch. Her stomach growled as she ducked under the shadows of towering mansions, each with pristine lawns and sleek cars glinting in the sun. She felt out of place, like an intruder in a world she could barely touch. That's when she saw it. Michael Alexander's car, gleaming under the driveway lights, and the young billionaire himself stepping out. But unlike what movies had trained her to expect, Michael wasn't pompous or haughty. Instead, he looked around, noticed her struggling with her groceries, and approached with genuine concern. "You okay there?" he asked, his voice calm yet authoritative. Jasmine, startled by the sudden attention, stammered, Yes, I'm fine. Thank you." Michael tilted his head, studying her briefly. There was something about her stance, the way she held herself despite apparent exhaustion. Something about the poise beneath her modest appearance. "You don't seem fine," he said, more like an observation than a question. "Come inside. You look like you could use some help." Before Jasmine could refuse, she found herself in the vast foyer of his mansion. The walls gleamed with expensive paintings, and chandeliers sparkled overhead. Michael's presence was commanding yet kind, and he seemed genuinely interested in her well-being rather than treating her like another wealthy stranger. It was a chance encounter that changed everything. Michael's father, James Alexander, the billionaire CEO of one of Georgia's largest tech firms, noticed Jasmine immediately. Perhaps it was her confidence, her discipline, or the way she carried herself even in worn-out clothes. Regardless, he saw potential in her that no amount of wealth could buy. "I'm offering you a job," James said one evening, sitting across from Jasmine in his home office. "Not just any job, a position where your hard work will be appreciated. You'll start as a maid, but I see you as someone who could do much more." Jasmine hesitated. She was used to hard work, yes, but never in a world of luxury and privilege. Yet the sincerity in James's eyes, and the possibility of earning enough to support herself while studying, made her accept. She agreed to start immediately. The first weeks were exhausting. Jasmine worked from dawn until dusk, cleaning, organizing, and managing tasks around the massive mansion. Yet she approached her work as she had every other challenge in her life, with discipline, precision, and an unyielding drive to do her best. She quickly earned the trust of the staff and the admiration of James and Michael, who noticed her quiet efficiency and composure under pressure. At night, she attended college classes. Her professors often expressed surprise at her intelligence, noting how she excelled despite the challenges of working full-time. Jasmine balanced it all with remarkable poise, though only she knew how often exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Yet the lessons of the Black Dragon, resilience, strategy, and mental focus, kept her grounded. Michael Alexander, James's son, was an unusual young man. Unlike the spoiled heir she had expected, he was curious, thoughtful, and surprisingly grounded for someone raised in immense wealth. He would often find excuses to speak with Jasmine, asking her opinions on trivial matters, sharing small jokes, or simply watching her work with genuine interest. Over time, he began to admire her courage, her intelligence, and the subtle strength she displayed without ever boasting. Jasmine, of course, maintained her boundaries. She was aware of the social gap between them and did not let familiarity cloud her judgment. Yet, she could not deny a growing fondness for Michael. He represented a bridge between the world she had known in Hengxian and the one she was trying to navigate now, a world of possibility, challenge, and complexity. As her life in Georgia began to stabilize, Jasmine noticed the undercurrents of tension in the city. Crime reports often mentioned gangs and groups targeting wealthy neighborhoods. Some of the news frightened her, but it also awakened something she had long buried, the instincts honed during years of Black Dragon training. She began to notice patterns, small details others missed, movements in shadows, and strange behaviors of people around her neighborhood. Yet she kept this side of herself hidden. Jasmine Alexander, the Black Dragon warrior, was invisible here. To James, Michael, and everyone else, she was the quiet, diligent maid. She smiled when needed, stayed in the background, and carried on with her work and studies. But the past, Jasmine knew, has a way of following even the most disciplined. Xing's Crimson Fangs, long thought to be a distant threat in China, had begun to spread internationally. Reports of coordinated attacks, kidnappings, and organized crime hinted at their expansion into the United States. Jasmine's instincts warned her that danger was approaching, though she had no way of knowing it would strike directly at the Alexander household. One evening, after finishing her college work and chores, Jasmine stood on the balcony of the mansion, looking out over the sprawling gardens and city lights. The quiet hum of the city below reminded her that, despite her success, she was still vulnerable. She touched the Black Dragon tattoo on her neck, hidden beneath her collar, and whispered quietly, "I will be ready. Whatever comes, I will protect them." Little did she know, the moment was closer than she imagined. Across the ocean, Xing and his lieutenants were strategizing their most audacious plan yet, a kidnapping that would test Jasmine's resolve, courage, and skills like never before. For now, Jasmine Alexander was simply a maid, a student, and a young woman carving her path in a foreign land. But beneath the surface, the fire of the Black Dragon burned stronger than ever, waiting for the day it would have to rise. How do you balance pursuing your dreams while adapting to a completely new environment, like Jasmine did in Georgia? Life at the Alexander mansion had settled into a rhythm. Jasmine moved with quiet efficiency through the sprawling hallways, her movements precise, almost imperceptible. James Alexander, the billionaire patriarch, relied on her without even fully realizing the depth of her capability. Michael, his curious and thoughtful son, continued to take an interest in her, not in a frivolous way, but with the sincere curiosity of someone who sensed there was far more beneath the surface. Jasmine maintained her careful balance. By day, she kept the mansion spotless, managed schedules, and catered to the needs of her employers. By night, she attended classes, absorbing knowledge with a thirst that rivaled her dedication to martial arts. And in the small moments between work and study, she trained herself in secret. The dojo of her youth may have been oceans away, but the discipline of the Black Dragon had been ingrained in her muscles and mind. Her life might have seemed normal to outsiders, but Jasmine was acutely aware of the world outside the mansion gates. The news reported a surge in organized crime across the U.S., with gangs targeting wealthy families for ransom. Oddly, she recognized patterns in the chaos. Patterns that reminded her of the Crimson Fangs, the group her grandfather's former right-hand man, Xing, had created. Rumors of a foreign-led gang operating internationally circulated in hushed corners of the internet and local law enforcement, but most dismissed it as exaggeration. Jasmine knew better. At the mansion, James Alexander remained largely unaware of the looming threat. His focus was on work, board meetings, and expanding his empire. He trusted his staff implicitly, believing his security measures sufficient. But Jasmine, with her instincts honed through years of Black Dragon discipline, could see the gaps. She had begun taking precautions subtly, repositioning cameras, checking locks, and reinforcing protocols without drawing attention. Michael, too, sensed something. He noticed Jasmine's occasional tense glances, her readiness to move at a moment's notice. One evening, he cornered her in the kitchen. "What's going on?" he asked quietly, concern evident. "I feel like something's coming, and you know more than you're letting on." Jasmine hesitated, weighing her options. Revealing her past would change everything. Her job, her place in this household, and perhaps even her life. Yet she needed him to understand that he was not just another charge to protect, but someone who mattered deeply to her. "It's nothing yet," she said softly. "But I have to be ready. Sometimes danger comes when you least expect it, and you need to be prepared." Michael studied her, sensing both honesty and restraint. "You're amazing," he said. "I don't know how you do it." Jasmine nodded, hiding her anxiety behind calm eyes. Focus, discipline, and the understanding that sometimes you fight not for yourself, but for the people you care about. The calm before the storm was ending. Jasmine could feel it in the wind that whispered across the mansion grounds, in the subtle shifts in the city lights, and in the tension that wrapped around her chest. Her heart steadied, her fists clenched, and the words her grandfather had spoken so many years ago echoed in her mind. The strongest warrior is the one who knows when to fight, and when to protect those who cannot defend themselves. The time was coming. The shadows of the past, long buried across oceans, were moving toward her, and Jasmine Alexander was ready to rise. How can being aware of your surroundings and trusting your instincts help you handle unexpected challenges in real life? The night was unusually quiet for the Alexander mansion. Jasmine Alexander moved through the dimly lit hallways, her senses alert, trained to notice the slightest irregularity. Michael had gone to his room after a late study session, unaware of the danger creeping closer. Jasmine paused by the kitchen window, eyes narrowing as she noticed a black SUV slowly rolling past the front gates. Her instincts flared. She had trained for years, prepared for every possible scenario, but this was different. The stakes were higher. It started subtly. The SUV stopped briefly, then reversed, disappearing into the shadows. Jasmine's heart quickened. Something was off. She moved to the balcony, scanning the property, and noticed figures slipping silently along the perimeter. They were skilled, calculated, professional. Her blood ran cold, not from fear but from recognition. These were no ordinary thieves. These were fighters trained in tactics and stealth, people who had crossed paths with the Black Dragon's teachings long ago. Xing had come. And he had come for Michael. Jasmine barely had time to react before the main doors burst open. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the mansion, and masked men stormed in, taking down the night guard with swift, brutal efficiency. Jasmine's body moved almost instinctively as she pushed Michael behind her, pulling him to the floor. "Stay down," she hissed, her voice low but commanding. Michael's eyes widened. "Who are these people? What's happening?" "They're here for you," Jasmine replied, her mind racing. She reached for a hidden dagger she kept tucked in her boot, a last resort, and prepared herself mentally for the fight she had trained for her entire life. The intruders advanced, assuming Jasmine was just a weak maid, someone insignificant. Their mistake would cost them dearly. As one man lunged forward with a knife, Jasmine twisted, catching his wrist mid-air, and flipped him onto the marble floor with a force that made his bones groan. Another charged, and she ducked, countering with a precise elbow to the chest that sent him crashing into the wall. Chaos erupted in the mansion. Michael scrambled to the side, barely avoiding a swinging bat. Jasmine moved like a shadow, her reflexes honed by years of Black Dragon training. She disarmed, dodged, and incapacitated with surgical precision. Each movement was a blend of speed, strength, and strategy, a demonstration of the mastery that had taken years to perfect. Then he appeared. Xing. Tall, imposing, and radiating menace. Xing moved with the confidence of someone who had never been denied. Jasmine froze for a brief second, only to feel a jolt of recognition from the years they had shared, years of betrayal and anger. She remembered his voice, sharp and dangerous, and the shadow of ambition that had once threatened her grandfather's dojo. "You!" Xing growled, stepping forward. "I should have known. The Black Dragon's prodigy would cross my path again." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "You're not taking him." Her voice was steady, unwavering. Xing laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Ah, the maid has spirit. But are you really ready to face me, little dragon?" He charged, throwing a series of brutal strikes. Jasmine moved fluidly, each block, parry, and counter-calculated. Yet Xing was powerful, faster than any of the men she had faced tonight. He pushed her to her limits, and for the first time in the fight, Jasmine felt the sting of uncertainty. Then, as he lunged toward her, Jasmine moved with a flash of speed, twisting her head and landing a decisive strike. In the motion, Xing caught a glimpse of the tattoo hidden beneath her collar, the coiled black dragon of the Black Dragon dojo. Time seemed to freeze. Xing staggered, muttering, "Black Dragoon." His mind raced, memories of Chenli, the warnings, and the humiliations of the past flooding back. For a moment, he faltered, unable to focus, his confidence shaken by the realization that the maid before him was the very warrior he had once sought to manipulate and defeat. Seizing the moment, Jasmine launched into a flurry of strikes, each one precise and devastating. She disarmed Xing's followers, incapacitated them with technique rather than brute force, and forced him into retreat. His mind could not reconcile the truth. A woman, once considered weak and insignificant, had become a master of the Black Dragon arts. Michael watched, eyes wide with astonishment, as Jasmine moved with strength and grace unlike anything he had ever seen. His respect for her, already growing over months of quiet admiration, transformed into awe. He realized that the quiet maid he had known was not only capable but lethal when protecting those she loved. Finally, Xing, beaten back and enraged, retreated through the shattered doorway. He did not disappear quietly. His retreat was laced with threats. "This isn't over," he shouted, his voice echoing into the night. "The Black Dragon will fall." Jasmine stood in the foyer, chest heaving, muscles trembling from exertion. Michael rushed to her side, his voice barely above a whisper. You saved me." I don't know how to. Jasmine placed a hand gently on his shoulder. It's over for now. But you have to understand, this is what I was trained for. Protecting people I care about. That's what I do. James Alexander, arriving moments later with local security alerted by the disturbance, saw the scene. Broken glass, incapacitated intruders, and Jasmine standing, calm and composed, her gaze unwavering. Shock and gratitude crossed his face. Jasmine, he said quietly, his voice filled with awe, I had no idea. I've trained for this, she replied simply. No one else needed to get hurt. The aftermath was quiet but profound. The intruders were arrested thanks to the evidence Jasmine had indirectly left behind. Techniques and movements that security could trace, identifying patterns that hinted at the Crimson Fangs. Michael stayed close, unable to shake the feeling that the woman he had underestimated was more extraordinary than anyone he had ever known. James, both grateful and impressed, made a decision immediately. He called Jasmine into his office the following morning. Jasmine Alexander, he began. Tonight you saved my son's life. You've shown courage, skill, and loyalty beyond anything I could have expected. I want you to lead our security team. From this day forward, you will be Chief Security Officer of my company. Jasmine blinked, a mixture of shock and pride washing over her. She had never sought recognition or reward. Her training had always been about discipline, honor, and protection. Yet this offer, this trust, validated everything she had worked for. I accept, she said finally, her voice steady. But understand this. I protect, not for money but for people. That will never change. James nodded, smiling with genuine respect. Michael, watching from the doorway, couldn't hide his admiration. For the first time, he truly understood who Jasmine Alexander was. Not just a maid, not just a student, but a warrior shaped by years of discipline and unyielding resolve. As the sun rose over Georgia, the mansion was quiet once more. Jasmine stood on the balcony, looking out at the city below. The threat of Xing and the Crimson Fangs still loomed somewhere in the world, but for now her family, her new family, was safe. The Black Dragon's legacy, her training, and her courage had prevailed. She touched the tattoo hidden beneath her collar, feeling its weight and significance. Jasmine Alexander was no longer just a maid, no longer just a student. She was a protector, a warrior, and a living embodiment of the Black Dragon's principles. And somewhere in the shadows, Xing would remember the night he underestimated the Black Maid, and the fury of a dragon unleashed. How would you act if someone you care about was in danger? Would you have the courage and quick thinking to protect them like Jasmine did? Months had passed since the night Jasmine Alexander saved Michael and defeated Xing's intruders. The Alexander mansion, once a symbol of vulnerability, had become a fortress under Jasmine's guidance. She trained the security team with precision and care, combining modern strategies with the discipline of the Black Dragon. Michael often watched her in awe, no longer just curious or fond, but deeply respectful of her strength, intelligence, and character. Their bond had grown, built on trust, admiration, and shared experiences, though Jasmine remained cautious, her focus always on protection first. Xing's presence lingered only in whispers of news reports and rumors. He had retreated, humiliated, but not defeated. Jasmine knew he might return someday, but she was ready. The Black Dragon's legacy was alive within her, a force tempered by years of discipline, courage, and honor. And as she stood on the balcony one evening, gazing at the city lights of Georgia, Jasmine Alexander understood that her journey had only just begun. She was no longer the small girl from Hengxian. She was a protector, a warrior, and a living testament that true strength lies not in power or wealth, but in loyalty, courage, and the heart to defend those who cannot defend themselves. The world could throw any challenge at her, but Jasmine Alexander, the Black Dragon's heir, would always rise. Thank you for watching this story to the end. What do you think happened next? Watch out for part 2.